On this episode of the Break the Cycle podcast, we are going to be discussing how to protect your peace, especially with us going back home for the holidays, seeing old friends and family members, being able to set boundaries and know which dynamics to dive into, opposed to which ones to pull back from, and being able to discern which people are contributing to your peace versus taking away from it. We'll dive into some stories about our family members and dynamics that you'll probably relate to with siblings and old friends, and being able to transcend any relationships that are no longer serving us. So tune in and protect your peace.
Protecting your peace. We are protectors of our own peace. We stay protected. We stay aligned. My first thought when ideating was, who protects your peace? Or who brings you the most peace? Is there someone that brings you a whole lot of peace? Daniel Costa?
I would say, interestingly, my mother, I would say, brings me the most peace and also removes the most peace from my life simultaneously. So it's kind of like a, double-edged sword.
It's giving duality.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say my mom.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. What about you, Tessa?
I agree. I think my mom definitely brings me the most peace and keeps me very grounded whenever I go back home. But also, I would say my hubby brings me a lot of peace. He's definitely my safe space.
You're married like that.
I am.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Shout out to Tessa as well. She is our substitute teacher. Kyla is unfortunately unavailable, but she'll be back soon. So shout out for Tessa for holding it down.
Shout out Tessa.
And shout out to Tessa's husband. And shout out to you being married. Because don't have that context on this couch whatsoever.
Who brings you the most peace?
Who brings me the most peace is Grammy Zorski. Shout out Grammy.
Love her.
Yeah, grounding force. I mean, I talked to that woman and I got 2 feet on the ground. And she's one of those people that I could also talk for hours with, just about stupid stuff. We'll talk about like politics. We'll talk about news. For some reason, old people love weather. So she often asks about the weather. We'll talk about some family We'll talk about what I'm doing. I'll ask her, has she left the house? She usually says no. But yeah, all the good chats with Graham. She rips the stoves when we're chatting. So it's good. I hear it light up. I talked to my grandfather today before talking to her. He's like, she's always smoking. And I'm like, let the damn woman smoke. I'm like, let that woman rip the stove. She knows where she's going. She's going soon. So enjoy it. But that's who protects my peace. But we are like right around the corner from the holiday season, and peace tends to be disturbed for some during the holiday season. In the past episode, I said cortisol Christmas. So I'm definitely one of those getting ready to fight the peace or fight for peace.
Which one is it?
What?
Fight for peace or fight the peace?
A mix of the two. As a dyslexic, that sounds like the same statement. I'm going to be honest. Still trying to parse that apart.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah, but the holidays can be just like a difficult time where like obviously your peace could be a little bit disrupted. So just trying to figure out, what the best way to be able to manage kind of these pieces are, because you're also with the people that also bring you the most peace. Like you're going to see mom, I'm going to see grandma. So it's an interesting part. But do you feel like you're like more reserved around family, or do you feel like you're more outspoken during your family sessions during holidays, non-holidays? Are you on guard protecting your peace, or you feel like you're at peace?
I feel like I used to be more reserved. I feel like I couldn't show up authentically because I would be judged for my lifestyle or living differently. But I feel like over the past few years, my family has come to respect the autonomy that I've carved out for myself, which is a good feeling. So I feel like I can just show up authentically, and if they detest something that I'm doing, they'll express it, but ultimately I know that they love and respect me. So it smooths over quite quickly, which is nice. So I've been able to just show up authentically, not have to reserve myself, really.
That's really nice. You can like return home and be like,
yeah, I'm just like, yo, what's up,
Yeah.
It's nice. What about you, Tessa?
I agree with you. I think I'm similar, but I also may just kind of brush things off, because at the end of the day, I know I'm there for like a limited amount of time, and I'm going to go back home to my safe space. So, you know, whether there are arguments or tension or whatever, I'm like, okay, I'm here for a little bit and I'm going to zoom on out. So
yeah,
I don't let it affect me as much as I may have used to before.
Me too.
What about you, Elijah?
it depends on the topic. We're obviously in a political climate right now, so sometimes the political chat gets a little bit crazy. Also, like my job, I like work in the mental health space. Like some of my family members like just don't believe in therapy or mental health, which is crazy. And that's like my being right now, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like a little bit of a clash where I went home. It was like last year, and I like asked my brother, I'm like, oh, how's your mental health doing? And like that's just like a common question that I feel like I would ask anyone here. They're like, why the fuck would you ask me that? And I'm like, brother, that response is why I'm asking you, dog. Like, you're looking unhappy or like reactive. But I feel like those types of topics, like, you can't really bring into the chat, especially being on the East Coast. It's like those aren't really like topics that you could talk about. So at times I think there's definitely like a concealing of my personality rather than like a revealing of my personality. And I think that I'm like more in a chameleon where I'm like strategic about what pieces of information can I reveal. But there are definitely some pieces, people like Grammy and other players in the family unit where I feel like I could be like fully my most authentic self, and that is really nice. So I mean, it really depends. And then sometimes I like want to ruffle the feathers because I'm a healed version of myself, and I sometimes see the unhealed version, and instead of giving peace, I'm like, I see that old pattern in myself and I get triggered. So in those instances, trying to take a step back and get some space rather than like doubling down in the emotion and the old response and being like playing a role once played prior to.
Yeah, you got to choose your battles wisely when it comes to especially people you love, you know, because I feel like it's really easy to get caught up in this superficial stuff, whether it's politics or career choices, where you're living, etc., religion. And if you focus, especially during the holidays, on the fact that y'all are family and you love each other and you're there sharing space to bring joy and to share that sacred time with each other instead of all the superficial BS, that's really what it's all about. So I challenge everyone
Tell that to my mother.
Cultivate that.
What about masking behavior? Do you feel like I think you're an open book, Danny, where you're just like a free flyer for most?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you have to like mask anything?
Not really. Well, the one thing that I really try to be cognizant of with my parents especially is not triggering worry in them, you know? So if there's something that's going on or I'm uncertain in something, like whether it's like with the business or relationally, I always try to think to myself, like, is this going to leave a lasting mark when I leave? Like, are they going to be worrying about me? And if so, I'll probably won't share it because otherwise I think it'll do more harm than good.
Okay.
But if I feel like they have some really good value to provide or I want to get their insight on something, then I will. But that's kind of how I make those sort of discernments. Interesting.
Yeah, they say that research shows that individuals modify their behavior when interacting with family members. The phenomenon is known as masking. Adjustment usually is driven by the desire to avoid judgment, discomfort, and meet family expectations. So, Tessa, do you ever feel like you're masking?
Yeah, I think I just like pick my battles wisely. Like if it's something that I feel like it's worth really diving into and maybe correcting someone about or, you know, calling someone out on, then I will. But if I'm like, this is probably going to do more harm than good, I don't know if it's necessarily worth it.
How do you define which battle to pick?
Like, will it affect me in the long run? Is it something that like I am like I don't consider as like part of my values or my beliefs, and I just kind of want to be like, hey, I don't think it's right if you say X, Y, and Z. But I think also in a time with politics, it's just like you have to tiptoe around it a little bit more, a little bit more gentle with everyone about it. Yeah.
If you're seeing like ignorance, are you like, let me engage and try to correct, or are you like, let them be ignorant?
I try to engage and correct, but I also try to see both sides of it as well, right? Where it's like, tell me why you feel that way and why your opinion is the way that it is, or why you agree with this person, or whatever the case may be. Because maybe I'm seeing something that, like, you know, I don't know about, you know?
Yeah.
They may be schooling me on something I don't know.
Yeah. And I think what you just mentioned there, like, tell me why. I think if you take it like an interrogative approach opposed to like just making claims and statements, it's much more invitational, right? Because then you can almost lead the horse to water, right? And if they choose to drink or not, that's up to them ultimately. But you can kind of breadcrumb it along with some tactful, strategic questions that are looking to derive some enlightenment, you know, and dissolve that ignorance. At least that's what I do with Elijah. Oftentimes, I feel like when we
and I like see him trying to fucking lead me in water, and I'm like, you go fuck yourself.
Yeah, he does that a lot.
Keep
but it's
asking
like,
questions.
hey, at least I'm not like forcing you to it. I'm just asking you questions, and you know the answers. So, you know,
I'm like, you see that pile of shit right there? Stare at it. Yikes. But I think, yeah, with the ignorance question, sometimes I'm just like, live in your ignorance, you know? Like, I'll pop into their little narrative, and I'll like pop into their little snow globe and like look around and be like, okay, it's pretty fucking shitty in here. But it's like, I'm hopping on a plane, you know what I mean? Like, I don't live like that.
Yeah, some people's paradigms are miserable, man.
Yeah.
The way that they see reality.
And sometimes you could poke holes, or you could try to like, well, you know, like lead them to water, but sometimes they're just in their like life, you know? And I think in those moments, if someone isn't open, and I feel like especially like when going back and like seeing parents, or like you're the cycle breaker and then you go back and see these cycles, kind of just maybe looking at it with like a bit of lightness and like a bit of like detachment, being like, it's fucking sad that sometimes they live like this, but at least you're creating your own narrative and life and story around your own self, and you could reflect and be grateful for the peace that you have cultivated for yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure.
There's almost like a power in hopping into him, being like, I am so grateful. I feel like after like me going home for a few days, I'm like getting back to California, and I'm so grateful for the life that I've cultivated.
It's like you walk back home and you're like,
yeah,
I could like breathe.
Snow back into the sheets, and I'm like, we are so back.
Yes.
We are so back. Yeah, I think there's protecting your peace on the holidays, and then just overall in general. And then there's also protecting your peace with like different demographics, i.e. like family, friends, workplace,
boyfriends, husbands,
relationships, strangers, all that good stuff. So, you know, we kind of like talked about the idea of like masking around family, but I think another place that is tough at times is friend dynamics. And maybe sometimes you really connected with someone, maybe it's a childhood friend, y'all are like rocking in a similar vibe or energy, or you're geographically in the same place and a lot is connecting, but maybe during the holidays or even at other times you go back and some just isn't connecting like it once did. And sometimes you have to go in and renegotiate that relationship, or maybe that relationship or that friendship isn't bringing you the peace that it once did, and it may be causing some conflict or some friction.
Yeah, I think when you're growing as a person, sometimes you lose people along the way. It could be, you know, because of your career choice or geographical location, or, you know, hobbies even. You're just not into the same things that you were into when you were in high school, or, you know, earlier or whatever. But yeah, I think that like I've definitely experienced that with friends. But it's also like you're not like switching up on anybody. It's just kind of like you're outgrowing one another. And I think it's natural, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely think it is. Have you ever had like a messy friend breakup?
I have.
All right, tell me more.
It was like a very unfortunate time during the pandemic / right before my move here. And I feel like there were a lot of signs that we were outgrowing one another, but it became just a little bit more toxic, a little bit more manipulative. And I was very much so a people pleaser, that I thought that like, if I don't stay in this friendship, I'm just like a disloyal person. But in reality, I think it was probably doing a little bit more detriment. to myself to stay in that friendship. And, you know, I was ignoring all of the red flags that I should have paid attention to. And, you know, once you set boundaries with people, they really show you your true colors. And they're like, oh, like you know, they'll just go kind of like ape shit on you. So
shit, someone went ape shit.
Yeah, but
that's wild.
You know, it is what it is.
It's part of it. It's part of the human experience. It's part of like renegotiating these friendships, and sometimes people don't like new dynamics. I think you brought up the point that you felt like you didn't have loyalty, or like you wouldn't give them loyalty, or the piece with loyalty.
Yeah, like it was like, you know, I pride myself to be very like loyal to the soil. Like I, you know, have my friends' backs because they were like my second family, you know? But once you realize like, maybe we have differences on, you know, different habits in life, and you're, you know, changing as a person for the better, and they may judge you on that, or may feel like you're switching up, or whatever the case is. And I think it's just like, your relationship with that person just isn't as close anymore. You could just be like associates. You could be friends, you know, from a distance. You don't have to be like besties, like on the phone every single day, like trauma dumping. But like, you know, you could just be cordial. And,
for sure. Absolutely. And it made me think like, are you more loyal to someone versus loyal to yourself?
I think that's like the battle of the people pleaser, right? And it's like, you really want to make sure everyone is happy, and like you want to make sure that you're there for everyone, but like, are you there for yourself? I don't know. Maybe you're neglecting parts of yourself because you're pouring into other people so much.
Yeah. I think a lot of that is also like how you're raised, and what's your attachment style. Like sometimes you want to go above and beyond, and you, at least at times I see this where I'll go above and beyond for other people, and not expectation that that's going to be returned, but like that's how I would want someone to show up for me.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm going to show up. And it's like you start to make excuses sometimes for other people. We're like, oh, it's just situational, or oh, this, or oh, that. And oh, the relationship's been, we've been friends for so long. And like, it's very easy to talk yourself into a certain narrative. But then at some point you have to stop and be like, this is fucking up my peace.
Yeah.
Like this is affecting my mental health. Like this is not a relationship that is bringing like positivity or filling my cup up. Like,
yeah, I'm
not loyal to myself at this point.
Yeah. Have you ever had a friendship breakup?
Yeah, I have. I think I'd say broke up with like my entire friend group really a few years ago when I moved back to Los Angeles.
A squad breakup.
Whew. Yeah. So it was like my 3 closest friends. We had all traveled together and partied together and had like a really fun college experience. And then as we were graduating, we kind of grew apart. Yeah. I moved out here to LA, and I started working on Cycle with Elijah. And Elijah, if anyone doesn't know this, has a TED Talk, and his TED Talk is about him embracing his sexuality and like
part of it, I guess.
What is your TED Talk about?
It is about like more like how to be cool, and it was like more of my journey and story on becoming cool and then feeling cold and then headed towards warmth.
Yeah, but throughout that TED Talk, essentially, you know, his, I guess, sexuality was at least revealed in some context, and I was essentially best friends with Elijah, right? Working on this business, and I feel like my initial friend group of straight white males kind of ostracized me because I was hanging out with Elijah all the time, and you know, he was like gay on, you know, social media, at least that's what they would connotate. So they would always just like send me memes like making fun of that friendship and like deducing that I was like gay with Elijah. And it was like really hurtful because it was like we were working on this business together, and while simultaneously having a really beautiful friendship as well and traveling the world. But it was really difficult because I felt like they were casting shame on and judgment onto me for spending so much time with you. And at that point I had to make a decision where I was either going to like cut back from this friendship and go back to my original friends who were still living in their hometown, doing the same old shit. Or I was going to just take the leap of faith and like just double down on this new friendship that I had cultivated with the opportunity to really build something big and beautiful. And I chose the latter, thankfully, but in the process lost a lot of my friends from home. And we're still cordial per se, but yeah, I think I just had to set some boundaries when I was just being made fun of a lot and like kind of cast these labels, you know, onto me that didn't feel like kind or authentic because it didn't resonate. You know, everyone was like calling me gay or a fag or this or that, and I'm like, no, I'm not, but you guys can, you know, have whatever narrative you want. And yeah, at that point I kind of just burned the boats and then doubled down on this new friendship. And I think things really started to open up and I started curating more friends, and more success with the business. And once I kind of cut ties with that and stopped caring what other people thought, I felt liberated, and this organic relationship that Elijah and I have cultivated really turned into what we have now, which is like this podcast, this business, and the ability to help so many people. So I'm really glad that I made that decision. But yeah, that was my squad breakup, and it was a really difficult time for me. It lasted it was like a 6 to 12 month period of my life where I was still trying to I was kind of back and forth in between my old friends, if you will, but feeling really glad that I made that decision now.
Do you feel like there was any part of them that was like territorial over you? It's like that, but that's like my friend, or like any form of like jealousy that you were hanging out with Elijah more than them, maybe?
I think maybe they had come and visit some of them, and they had met Elijah at different points. And I think maybe they kind of saw me spreading my wings, if you will. Elijah and I were like traveling a lot to like Europe or like Iceland and Asia, and just doing things that I wasn't doing with my old friends, and like trying to step into this entrepreneurial journey as well and doing it. And I feel like, yeah, there was definitely some jealousy, maybe some sort of protectiveness in terms of like, we kind of want Danny to be a part of like the hometown squad still, you know, and be like a hometown hero, which I felt like I had that era and it served me for what it did, but I was ready for something new. But yeah, it was definitely like a leap of faith. And yeah, I mean, I'll still see those guys every now and again, but it's like once every 6 months, and we'll just go do a cold plunge or something, chill. But it's not nearly as close as we used to be, and that's okay, you know. But it was hard.
Yeah. What about you, Elijah? Did you have a friendship breakup?
Yeah, I've had a few. You were there kind of when I had a friendship breakup. Well, I'm very selective with the people that I surround myself with. Like since leaving hometown and then going through and like being a promoter and seeing so many people, I feel like because what I was raised in, I'm quite socially intelligent, where I could see people's like intentions or what they want and who they are. So I'm very, very selective with the people that I surround myself with. I'm like, they need to be filling up my cup. If not, like clean cup. Like I'm going to kind of take a step back. And I think, you know, to Danny, your story, like even I think you were starting to see some of the relationships and dynamics that I had. And people my friends will joke, of course, but nothing like at something that I'm doing. I feel like everyone that I surround myself with is very supportive, because I've been so selective. And if I do see certain behavior, I'm like clean cut. So we were in Utah, and there was someone that I met right before COVID. It literally was right before COVID. And this person was a little bit older than me, super nice girl. We would chat here and there. When she would come out to Los Angeles, I would see her, I would visit her, or she would visit me. And then when I went to Utah for work, I would see her as well. And there was an occurrence where we were all supposed to go out. We were supposed to see each other for dinner. And one thing led to another, and she was like not communicating, not texting, and kind of just like left me completely on read. And then it was like a series of like excuses where she was like, I forgot my ID at home, or I forgot this, or I did that. And she just like wasn't really showing up. Like it just wasn't coming through consistently. So it was just like, this isn't someone that I want to surround myself with. If someone is going through something, they'll be like, yo, I'm going through something. I can't do this right now. But I think, showing clear communication or signs that you are a clear communicator is very important to me. And if you don't have that behavior, it's not someone that I could keep in my close circle, because I need that type of like directness per se, maybe from the East Coast, I don't really know. But once I saw that like kind of floundering like energy when it came to communication, I was just like clean cut. And even Danny, you were like, you're gonna cut her like that? And I'm like, absolutely I am, like for sure.
So did you ghost her?
Kind of, yeah. She's reached out a few times and I just like haven't responded, and we never really talked about it. And I'm sure if I was back in Utah, we could probably just be like, yo, everything's good, it's clear now. But I think I've gone through a few different breakups where I'll be like, yo, this behavior wasn't cool, and then I'll distance myself. And there'll still be times where like that happened to me recently with another friend, but they're friends with a bunch of my other friends in a group from college, and now we're really cool. You know, I'll pick up the phone and we could talk for like 30 minutes every like 3 months. When the friends come in town, we could be cool, we could be cordial, but it's just not someone that I want to spend my time and energy with, right? So I think when you go through these friendship breakups, like you have to be very aware of like the 5 people that you surround yourself with, the 7 people that you surround yourself with, they are a direct reflection of who you are. Like a direct reflection of who you are. And if you're not cautious of even one of those people and they are like screwing up your peace, like that is going to have an effect on your mental health, you know? But when we were kind of doing some background on this topic, it was interesting because I started to look at the difference in between friendship breakups and relational breakups as well. And they say that friendship breakups are seen like from a social emotional perspective just as harsh as like a romantic breakup. But I feel like no one talks about like friend breakups and like how tolling they really could be.
Yeah, you go from maybe speaking to this person every single day or multiple times a week, hanging out with them constantly. They're like a core person in your life, and then it's just like they're removed. So I can totally see that. And yeah, you're right. Nobody really talks about that at all. Nobody warns you.
Yeah.
I feel like most people have gone through a friendship breakup, and maybe it's just kind of seen as like a natural part of life, because even as you're like going through elementary, middle school, high school, etc., I feel like, at least for myself, I went through a few different friend groups. And so it's more of like an organic process. Whereas like relational breakup, you're ultimately seeing this person as like a potential life partner. And so it can be a bit more traumatic and dramatic per se. Whereas like, I feel like most people accept that, you know, as you transition into adulthood and graduate college and move to a new city for work, what have you, it's just an organic process. But it's still, I feel like equally is, maybe not equally, but really difficult. And I think it needs to be addressed in terms of how to work through these things, you know?
Yeah. I'm a firm believer, like some friends are there for like a month, like a year, 10 years, even your whole life. And that there's a very select few that are there for your whole life. But yeah, that's an interesting point, because there's almost more of a comfort or an openness in the idea of like you being close to someone and then naturally growing away. Versus like in a relational dynamic, you're like, no, this is my person, and then they're no longer your person. But I think that also could be said for a friend dynamic too.
Yeah, especially like a best friend.
Yeah.
You know, but asking yourself if they're there for a season or a reason, I guess, is a good way to kind of filter that out too, and not take those breakups so personally.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's okay to grieve friendships. It's like really important to process that loss.
Yeah, I believe that every person in your life, whether they're still in your life or not, like you've met for a reason and they're there for a lesson. And sometimes these friendships teach you a lesson, maybe about yourself, maybe about what you do want in a friendship, what you look forward to. And it kind of, you know, when you are in the process of making new friends, maybe you see a red flag earlier on than you may have before. Yeah. You're like, oh, I'm not doing this again. No.
Right. I've learned this lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also a reflection of yourself, and like your friends are your chosen family, you know? So it's like, you know, be aware of that. But yeah, grieving relationships could definitely be difficult, because it could also lead to you holding resentment. Like, resentment sucks. We talked about it. Check out one of the episodes, our past episode. But like holding on to that will affect your body and how you show up in other dynamics as well. So ensuring that like processing through those emotions of grief and not just kind of like sweeping it under the rug, being like, oh yeah, like fuck that person. Rather like, what did they do and how did they show up, and what lesson can I derive from this relationship? And trying to bring the positivity out of the situation, find that silver lining, highlight all of the good things, because obviously you're friends for a reason, and then like take a step back, set a boundary, be able to create a little bit of a space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not just friends, it's also romantic relationships as well. That's also kind of like a key part of this, being able to be in a relationship, and sometimes relationships can be a bit toxic. Danny, I feel like you have had a fair share of relationships. We never really talked about them on the podcast.
I feel like, I mean, I've mentioned them a few times. Yeah, I would say I've been in like 3 relationships, which is, I don't know if that's a lot for 26.
I think it depends.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a few relationships. I feel like relationships and love itself is the most pure form of feeling a connection to God, personally. Like my grandma always used to tell me this thing, that the eyes are the window to the soul. And I just feel like if you're in love with someone and you're just like looking in their eyes, and especially if you're in a childlike state and you're playful and you adventure together, it's like, that's like the most alive I've ever felt in my life, or during those moments, adventuring to new places and just like in complete bliss and in a state of love. So having to let go of that, I feel like is difficult for anyone. And yeah, I've had to do that a few times now. And for the past few years have been single for the first time in my adult life. So from like 17 to 23, I was just constantly in relationships. And now for the last 3 years, I've just been like on my own and learning to love myself and birthing this business into fruition. But yeah, I think for the next few months / years, I'm definitely calling in some balance in that capacity too, and being able to cultivate that sense of intimacy as well with someone. So we'll see.
Do you feel like there were parts of your relationship more towards the end where you weren't effectively protecting your peace, or affected your peace?
For sure. Breakups will show you where you have not healed yet, right? And it just becomes so blatantly obvious because I feel like you're most prone to a toxic dynamic towards like the transitioning end of a relationship, where feelings of emotion or attachment or jealousy or just unhealed trauma come to the surface. And for me, I think after my last relationship, all of that really came out into the open for myself. And over the past few years, it's really been a journey of trying to heal those inner wounds and return to myself.
Interesting. What about you, Tessa? Being married now and being in a healthy, secure relationship, like, do you feel like you went through a few different people until you found it? And did you ever have a problem with protecting your peace in like a relational dynamic?
I think I was like very guarded when it came to like romantic relationships in general, partly because of like cultural reasons. I'm the only person that like has a quote unquote love marriage in my family, meaning like I fell in love with the person and then we got married, versus like kind of like it being more of like someone in the community that may have like
so like arranged,
but there's a lot of like negative connotation to arrangement.
Okay.
It's more of like, okay, for example, you go to an aunt's wedding and there's like someone else within the community that comes up and they're like, hey, is this like your daughter? And they're like, yeah, this is my daughter. And she's like, I have a son around the same age, whatever. And then they try to basically like hook you up. So it's more of like comfort for the parents to be like, I know this family, I know they come from a good family, like, they have the same culture or whatever, you know what I mean? I was battling with that for quite some time, where it's like, do I go the traditional route and have like my parents kind of like assist, or do I like find the person that I love, and how do I go about that,
Yeah. Wow. And you're one of 6.
I'm one of 6.
Whoa. Okay,
Yeah.
Talk about black sheep, talk about cycle breaker. That's not, I'm not saying that that's a negative thing, because I think a lot of people, especially around the world, like here in Western like cultures, it's like that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But then you also talk about like in the Middle East or even like in India, and it's like finding love seems like also somewhat of a crazy idea as well. Like, who is this person? They're not pre-vetted. Like, you don't have any background or understanding of who they are and how they were raised, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when I first told my parents about, you know, my current husband, I was like, hey, like, you know, I met this guy. We're pretty serious. You know, I wasn't going to tell my parents about anybody that wasn't serious.
Of course.
So they were just like, how, what, where did you find, like, they had so many questions. And he's also, you know, he has a different cultural background, although they're similar and there's a lot of similarities between the two. They were just like, what? Like, they were so confused, but shout out to them. They accepted it and they weren't like giving me a hard time about it or anything like that. They were just like genuinely concerned. Like, who is this person? So yeah, you know, if that helps someone else in my family be like, you know what, I can find someone that I love, then.
And you have a lot of nieces and nephews too. So
I do. And so, you know, I think I went about it in a pretty respectful way, you know? I don't think I did anything like outrageous in the process. So, yeah.
And then remind me your husband's cultural background versus your family's cultural background.
So my husband is Indian and Pakistani, and I'm Arab and African. So there's a little bit of like a language difference. Obviously, we all speak English, but you know, it's a couple things that are a little bit different. But for the most part, same religion, similar cultural backgrounds.
And then do you feel like at any point throughout that process, do you feel like your peace was compromised during that? I mean, outside of obviously like the person that you love meeting the people that you love as well, which like any human experience would be like.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Yeah, of course.
I was on edge the entire time. But, you know, I was pretty confident in who I, you know, wanted to be with. And my parents saw that. So how are they going to fight that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Obviously they met him and they know like he's an amazing person as well. So there were really no like red flags. They met his family. Both of our families get along really, really well. And so I think it's a really nice testament versus like horror stories that you may have heard in, you know, other cases.
I really haven't heard any horror stories, honestly. Well, I guess in like families not meshing well together.
Yeah.
It's pretty common, I feel like.
You think so?
Yeah. But I'm curious, Tessa, how many like tries, if you will, did it take you to find the one? Like, were you in any committed relationships before that, or was that like your first one?
I was, and you know, I got my heart broken. But that was a lesson that I had to learn. And, you know, I also even tried to be like, okay, maybe I'll give it a try. Whoever these people that come, like, you know, asking for your hand. But there was just something in my soul that was like, this just doesn't feel right. And I feel like I'm, you know, not being like true to who I am. And at the end of the day, this is my new family that I'm creating. Yeah. So whether or not it's what my parents want, it is at the end of the day who I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. So I have to really make sure that I am like with who I wanted to be with.
Yeah.
And truly love who I am going to be with. Like, this is someone where I'm like, okay, I'm confident with how we're going to raise our kids the same. And we have similar views on stuff that maybe traditionally people will not have similar views. So yeah.
And do you feel like the aunties were in the background like chatting, like Tessa's not going this route, like shit could get weird?
Yeah, I'm sure that, you know, there are people that talk and I don't give them any time of day because I don't really care.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. And, you know, like I said, I'm really proud of my parents for like not allowing outside voices to influence, you know, whether or not they support our decision.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's like the friend thing. It's like, who are you loyal to? Whose peace are you protecting? It's like, at the end of the day, you're living your own life. You know what I mean? Like, who cares what anyone else says, you know? And I think also, I saw this when my sister got pregnant, and it was quite a scandalous story where she was with one guy, ended up getting with this other guy, ended up having a kid and 2 kids. Now they're married, and now she has 2 more kids, and now everything's beautiful and great. But like in the midst of it, everyone was like, this is so dramatic. She had twins, and then she had a 3rd child, and everyone was like, how are they going to do it financially? Like all this thing. And everyone's like running their mouth, and it's like, at the end of the day, it's her life.
Yeah.
She's going to figure it out.
100%.
She's going to do it, you know? But it's almost like when you're in a family unit, it's like everyone is entitled to, some type of commentary or just like some type of opinion.
Yeah.
Isn't that ironic? Like the people that are supposed to have your back and support you the most are sometimes the people that are like not preying on your demise, but they're just chatting and like, talking behind your back sometimes too,
Yeah. I think they probably, I genuinely felt like it was such out of a deep place of love and care, but it comes out the left ear and it's like judgment, shame. How is this going to? What is this going to? And it's all these ideas of like the potential that could be negative.
Yeah, I guess it's more like the perpetuation of worry and fear more than it is like hoping that something goes wrong. But I ultimately think it's from, a place of compassion and care. They just want what's best for you.
Yeah, there's a love. That's like the foundation of all these pieces.
Yeah.
But it's like, how is that communicated? And I think that's why family, relationships, even friends, those are the people that could like mess up your peace the most because they know you so intimately. They know you so well. And they know these buttons,
Yeah. I also feel like once you're confident in who you are as a person and like really took time to figure that out, everybody else's opinion doesn't matter. Because you're like, I'm not as influenced by you as I may have been before because I know who I am.
There's a cool, calm confidence in being who you are, because I think protecting your peace or almost being like a people pleaser, it's like you're looking for like acceptance or you're looking for validation. But if you could derive that from yourself, you start to take that power away from other people and start to derive it a bit more from yourself, because you know your value, you know your worth, you know what you stand for,
Yeah.
And I think that like protecting your peace, a big part of this is people pleasing as well. Would you consider yourself a people pleaser?
I'm a recovering people pleaser.
We love recovery.
We're working on it.
How are you recovering from being a people pleaser?
I think I'm just like more aware and more confident in who I am now versus like who I maybe was before, where I was seeking validation from other people. And I think I'm just like way more confident than I was.
Yeah.
Are you a people pleaser? I don't see you as much of a people pleaser.
I was a people pleaser at one point when I like first got to school, because I was looking for people's validation. So I'm like, I will be everything that you want me to be.
Yeah.
Because it was rooted from a lack of self-love or just like an approval standpoint. Like I'm searching for external approval. Please give it to me.
Yeah.
Because that is where I derive my value. And then you grow and you develop and you're like, fuck all that noise. I could do that internally.
Yeah.
But I guess like no longer recovering. But I am definitely, I think, a people pleaser. Not really for my family, but I think for the people, like my friends, I'm like, their opinion really does matter to me. And I will go like above and beyond to ensure that like they are pleased in a way. But because like, similar to what I said before, like I would want them to go the distance. So I'll go the distance, And that's why I think it's so important to have those like really healthy boundaries, or just like knowing your friends. Because I think that in some ways I'll look to my friends as a sense of like they're clearly watching my six. So if I'm overcome with emotion or like I'm missing logic or I'm missing a piece, I'm gonna like turn to them and be like, yeah, am I missing something here? And I'm gonna value like almost their opinion just as much as I would value my own opinion, because I trust them so much.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that being able to have that small group is really important to me. So yeah, people pleasing in the sense of my friends.
When you're transitioning your friend group and you're more isolated, you, like a chameleon, kind of have to adapt and like mold yourself a little bit to quote unquote please the like new people you're trying to transition into and build those relationships with. But so I definitely feel like I underwent like a phase of that per se. But also as I step more into my authenticity and my self identity, I feel that I'm able to like stand for what I feel is right as well, and not acquiesce or give in to peer pressure, if you will, and compromise my values. And I think that's ultimately what gives you self-respect and gives you like dignity, is like not compromising your values and pleasing people in that capacity. So yeah, short answer is I'm transitioning away from being a people pleaser. Yeah.
At least we're all not narcissists.
That's true.
But yeah, I think it's something innate that a lot of people, a majority of people, there are those people, and I feel like you can tell the ones that just are aflame on their own journey and give absolutely zero shits what anyone has to say, and those people are badass. And I feel like we all have a little spark of that. But for the most part, everyone is trying to feel connected and feel loved, you know, and innate with that is pleasing others too.
Yeah, I think the people pleasing part is like looking for love and acceptance. That's what you're searching for. And sometimes it's hard to derive from yourself, so you look to other people.
Yeah. If you can generate that internally, though, then you are not dependent on anyone, and there's a power in that for sure. But it's like the difference between like interdependence and codependence. You know, being interdependent, being able to rely on others for love, but ultimately being able to sustain it internally is really what gives you the most power and autonomy as an individual in my eyes. But working towards it.
Step by step, breath by breath.
Brick by brick.
Brick by brick. But yeah, protecting your peace obviously happens like at all times. But we mentioned earlier, like the holidays, it really comes up. And as we are on the brink of the holiday season, what I thought was really funny and interesting when doing some research on keeping the peace is when you return home at times, you could fall back into old roles. So maybe at one time you were a peacemaker, or maybe you were more of the rebel or the caretaker. And sometimes the version of who you are today is digress to a past version when returned home. Do you connect with that in any way, Danny? Do you feel like you were once, I feel like the youngest is a little bit more of like that rebel. So do you feel like you're like more of like that rebel behavior at home?
Yeah, I feel like I try to like step out of the box a little bit and challenge people's paradigms, like my siblings, and trying to get them motivated to be more like entrepreneurial, or like invoke that like kind of hustler motif in them. You know, I'll try to do that when I'm home for the holidays and get them to start up their own thing or build some form of entrepreneurship, whatever it may be. So I'll definitely inspire that, or try to at least. But I also think as the little one too, just like being poked fun at is also a position that I don't know if you guys relate to.
100%. I have 4 brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it's kind of fun, you know. They're just like talking shit, and you're just like, now I can dish it back, you know. But it kind of puts you into that like state as like a little kid, you know, and just being able to banter with your siblings. So it's something I enjoy in that capacity. You know, it's 100%. Like just shooting the shit with your siblings.
Yeah,
it's fun.
I turn into the button pusher.
Yeah.
I just like kind of at times can cause some chaos.
Yeah.
Because I know like I'm like.
What's an example of you being a button pusher?
Like for my brother Robert, he's like in the middle. Like I know what like gets him wild up, so I could just like be like reaction. You know what I mean? Like button here, spin this, dial there, got it. You know, which is fucked up. But I think that's with family. So sometimes I kind of get into that state. I think it's just like what I would do when I was a kid to like express or just like get a reaction, you know, which is definitely not healthy. So I feel like sometimes I could do that with certain people, especially my mother as well, you know, if I'm like seeing her act up and I'm like, we're going to act up even more, you know, which is really, it's tough during the holidays. But yeah, I could see myself falling into this. I try not to do it because it's just like a past version of myself. I'm not like a button pusher today, I don't think. But I will definitely fall into that role.
Do you feel like as being the youngest siblings, you know, maybe, I don't know about you, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, getting poked fun at, like, do you feel like they take you a little bit more seriously now? Like your opinions and your lifestyle and everything?
Yeah, I think so. I think my sister and I butt heads sometimes because of that. If I like call her out on something, I think the good thing about it is like she's giving weight to my opinion and my perspective, but it can also trigger her sometimes, and then we'll like push each other's buttons. So that's, you know, kind of difficult. But yeah, I think as you mature and you carve your own path, intrinsically your siblings start to like develop more respect for you, you know, and see you as an equal instead of just like the little brother, sister. What about you?
Yeah, I think that the biggest point was like once I got married, everybody kind of started taking me a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I obviously am bringing my husband around, so people are acting a little bit more like, you know, polite. They're not like bullying me like they used to. And I think that actually I'm able to have like deeper conversations with my siblings than maybe I was able to have before, because they can take me a little bit more seriously, and they're like, oh, she is 30. Not 12.
She's old now.
So yeah, what about you, Elijah?
I feel like some of my siblings, yes. Other ones like definitely see me as the younger sibling and are just like won't take my opinion.
They're like, this kid's still talking shit since day one. He's still just talking shit.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's almost like I don't want to say they don't like look at the things that I've done with value, if that makes sense. Like some of my siblings are like, wow, like you're traveling a lot, like, you know, you've lived in China, like look at all these things that you've done. And I think some of them, I don't want to say like feel inferior because I don't want to put that on, but it's almost like there's tension that's felt when I return home in a way.
Like they are suffering with their own like internal battle with maybe
their shit. Yeah, like they've never left.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, how can the youngest like fly the coop and be doing maybe these things? So I feel like at that time, and you could also tell when people are like in your corner and being like, yo, what's up? Like, what are you doing? What are you up to? What does that look like? I think also, I don't know how you feel about this. You're a little bit closer to home, but being so far away, like the idea of like California to people on the East Coast are like, whoa, that's Cali, man.
Like,
you
yeah,
know?
you're from Cali.
Yeah, they're like, whoa, you know? And it's, I mean, you're just used to a 6-hour flight, like it's not that deep, but like for other people who like don't really necessarily have that, it's different, you know? So I think that distance also like kind of creates me in my own world, and then when I do come back, it's like an assumed role that I once played because I'm not there. And like every time I go back, it's like so much growth is happening. I'm like looking in the mirror and I'm like, fuck, another blackhead, you know? Like, let me push this emotional trauma out of my body. I'm constantly doing that work, but that obviously isn't seen because I'm popping in just once a year, twice a year, I guess, you know?
Are you the only sibling that moved away from your hometown?
2 of them are there. One's in Boston, one's in DC. So like 6-hour drive, 2-hour drive.
Okay.
So
not too far.
Not too far, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a little different. But I think like with protecting your peace, especially around family, like creating boundaries and also realizing like these people can only affect you as much as you allow them to affect you in a way. And like you have the ability to kind of like pull away and create some of that dissonance. So those reactions maybe don't affect you as much as you would want them to affect you if they are maybe not as positive as you would want them to be.
Do you feel like the distance has like helped your relationships with your families?
Yeah, in some sense. I think when I was like growing up, I got really good. I just had that tough relationship with my father and at times even with my mother. So I went through like parental estrangement, or just like it just got really bad, and I was like, the only way that he could hurt me is if I'm allowing him to hurt me. So let me just like emotionally like cut myself. So I've gotten almost like out of a survival mechanism, like let me emotionally detach. So no matter what they say or do, it doesn't affect me. Like even if I call home at times, I think I still have like reminiscence of that where it's like they could be like, I'm so proud of you. It doesn't hit me versus being like, you're horrible and you're not doing anything right, which it doesn't happen obviously, but I think that there's still reminiscence of that as I like had to like almost cut to like fly, and now as I like reconnect, sometimes it doesn't connect as strong just because like what I went through at times was difficult. You know.
What about you, Danny?
Well, my sister lives here, so I think in that capacity I got much closer to her and her daughter, my niece. So it definitely helped strengthen my connection with my sister and my niece, which was great. And then I think with my parents too, the space has developed I think for me, speaking on behalf of like myself in regards to my parents, like I miss them and I love them. So like I think when I go back, I really enjoy spending time with them. So I would say in that capacity, yes. And I think the inverse is probably true. It just makes the time that we share together more valuable, because especially as the youngest, my parents are like in their mid to late 60s. Like there's only like a handful of times I'm going to see my parents now. Like maybe like 24 times.
Yeah.
I'll go see my parents again, you know, which is kind of like sad to think about. But at the same time, it makes me value each one of those times I go back for the holidays way more, you know? So yeah, I think all in all, it definitely affected in a positive way. What about you?
No, 100%. I think it definitely helped. And like you said, we only have so much time with our parents left. And my parents are a little bit older than yours as well. So every time I go back, I just feel like I'm seeing them age quicker because I'm away from them for longer.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of like breaks my heart a little bit and like really makes me value and like want to spend more time with them and want to like make sure that the time that we do spend together is positive and like it's a really nice experience so that we're able to create more, you know, positive memories together.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seeing your parents age is like, it's almost like a psychedelic experience in some regard. You like see them get older and you start realizing that like change is the only constant. Like everyone is going to get older, and it really makes you come to terms with like death and with just being able to detach from things that you love. And I think ultimately it does help you with these other facets too when it comes to relationships and whatnot, and being able to like love your family from afar, you know, and have like a respect for them regardless of, you know, how close you are to them.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boundaries is really important when protecting peace. Other things that are like really good takeaways is you brought this up, setting time limits for difficult conversations.
Yep.
So if we are engaging in a difficult convo about past experiences or maybe politics, checking in, being like 60 seconds on the clock.
Yeah.
Not actually 60 seconds.
I'm like an expert conversation changer. Like, okay, we're gonna pivot to this side now.
Yeah.
Or even if it's like someone that's like, you know, wanting to vent, I'm like, okay, you can vent, but like we're not gonna spend the whole day venting, right? It's like we can vent and then let's, you know, switch up the convo or go do something else, so it's not just, you know, down energy.
Yeah, that's actually really wise to be able to just set time limits for those sort of containers.
Yeah,
transition. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I need to enact that.
Another piece here, let's ensure that we are avoiding energy vampires, those people who are the ones that actually need the boundaries. There are sometimes that you could spend time with someone and just feel completely depleted. So checking in on who those people are and just like, let's limit those times, either seeing those people or being open to the point where it could really affect you.
Yeah, and I would say like whether it's your friends, family, loved ones, what have you, take inventory of how you feel when you engage with their presence and then afterwards as well, and see like who's worth spending extra time with during the holidays and who's worth diving into maybe some of those trauma dumps versus maybe setting some boundaries with, you know, and what's actually cultivating your energy versus taking away from it.
Watch out for those vampires.
Yeah.
I think to your point, Danny, like self-reflecting on the holidays, it's like a really great point just to be like, yo, checking in. Does this person give me energy? Does this person not give me energy? Like I'm spending part of the holidays with my cousin because I know every time I go there, I'm like energized. So I'm like, that's a touch point, 100% going to stop there because it's going to fuel me up.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this video on Instagram and TikTok. I see it often. I don't know if it's just like my For You page, but it's this woman saying like, I keep quiet for keeping the peace, but whose peace am I keeping? That's like always a line. So like I kept quiet for keeping the peace, but whose peace am I keeping? Speak your truth. Try to do it respectfully, whatever dynamic it is. But I think part of keeping the peace is also not, and keeping your own peace is not bottling things up and holding those emotions. Like find a way to release it, healthy way to release it. Like try to speak to the person. If the person isn't going to be receptive of it, like write a letter, get out and do something that physically is going to release energy as well, especially during the holidays, because it's very easy just to like get pent up. Maybe you're back in the cold, or you're in the cold now and like the seasonal depression setting in, or you have like limited hours of sunlight. All these components could lead to your peace being affected even during the holiday season. So trying to find ways that you could release that energy, because it is inside of you.
100%.
So happy holidays. Keep the peace. Keep your peace. Keep those boundaries. Keep the vampires out. Get the garlic. Wear it around your neck. No vampire energy suckers here.
Protect your peace.
100%.